There's a smell you could never confuse with anything else. It seeps into your mind whether you want it to or not, triggering an almost mystical sense of comfort, safety, and warmth. The feeling runs so deep it seems like an essential part of human nature. But this isn't just some childhood memory or a biological craving for food. It's a genetic access code to your nervous system, a trigger that works without fail. Thousands of years ago, this mechanism was planted in the human psyche, and it has been doing its job perfectly ever since. What follows completely shifts the way you see what ends up on your plate every single day. Bread has traditionally been viewed as the foundation of life. From an early age, we're taught that grains are a source of strength, and that the shift to farming turned apes into humans, allowing civilization to flourish. But if you look at that story from another angle, the picture becomes the exact opposite. The agricultural revolution might not have been a step forward at all, but rather an act of biological sabotage aimed at drastically cutting the human lifespan short. It's a deception so massive that it shows up on your table 3 times a day, disguised as necessity and tradition. Ancient texts, the Bible, Sumerian tablets, Indian Vedas, contain details that mainstream history prefers to write off as metaphor. Characters who lived before a certain historical threshold existed for centuries. Methuselah, 969 years, Noah, 950, Adam, 930. Science explains this away as mythological exaggeration, translation errors, or confusion with lunar cycles. But logic suggests something else. Chroniclers who obsessively tracked the movements of stars and built incredibly complex calendars probably weren't getting their own rulers' ages wrong. More likely they were recording the biological norm of their era. If you map out human lifespan over time, a sharp drop becomes unmistakable. It happens exactly when, according to the official story, humanity settled down and started mass-producing wheat and rye. Progress, marketed as a blessing, slashed lifespan tenfold, from 900 years down to 70. This isn't evolution, it's degradation, an artificial limit placed on the body's potential. Imagine a car built to last 1,000,000 miles, but fueled with oil that's guaranteed to wreck the engine by 100,000. That oil became complex carbohydrates, gluten, and yeast cultures. It's the foundation of a diet that reshaped humanity beyond recognition. The new rulers of the world faced a control problem. They needed labor, but long lifespans were inconvenient. A person living 500 years accumulates critical knowledge, sees through patterns of control, and stops fearing authority because they've had time to fulfill themselves. You can't manage someone like that. The ideal worker should be strong, but live just long enough never to fully grasp their situation. The life cycle is kept short. Birth, basic training, reproduction, work until worn out, disposal. 70 years is perfect. The first 20 are spent instilling obedience, the next 40 working for the system, the last 10 slowly fading away. The biological potential of the human body hasn't changed. It's still built for centuries of active life. But to keep that potential from ever being realized, you have to alter the fuel, switch the body from a high-performance energy source to a heavy, clogging substitute. And they found it. Grains became that engine-destroying oil. The agricultural revolution, celebrated as humanity's greatest achievement, starts to look like an act of biological sabotage when you really examine it. And the evidence of that sabotage still sits on every dinner table today. There existed a world that doesn't appear in any textbook. Ancient texts describe the food of the gods: ambrosia, nectar, manna from heaven. Eastern teachings speak of prana, ether, a life force flowing through space. Studies of air bubbles trapped in amber reveal that the atmosphere's composition in ancient times differed from today's. Oxygen levels, pressure, the planet's electromagnetic background, all were different. It's highly probable that our ancestors absorbed a significant portion of their energy directly from the environment. through breath, through the skin. Food served merely as a light supplement, a carrier of information. The body functioned like a perfect reactor, converting external energy into vital force. Then something happened that changed everything. Evidence of a global catastrophe appears in the legends of every culture. A great flood, falling celestial bodies, shifting poles, a long night lasting months. Geological layers preserve the scars, submerged forests, mixed bones of animals from different climate zones, a layer of clay covering ancient cities. It wasn't just a civilization that perished. The very environment transformed. The atmospheric shield became different, the ethereal currents were cut off, free energy disappeared. The survivors found themselves in an empty world, a world filled with ruins whose purpose they couldn't grasp. Massive buildings with 5-meter ceilings, incomprehensible machinery, networks of underground tunnels. Their former energy source was gone. Their bodies, deprived of accustomed nourishment, demanded something else. And that's when grain appeared. With astonishing persistence, the culture of bread was woven into every religious and mythological system. Bread is called the body of the Lord, a gift from the gods, the staff of life. The message is relentlessly drilled in. Without bread, you will perish. It was an unprecedented campaign that convinced humanity that this heavy, starchy mass, chemically similar to wallpaper paste, was the only real food. Biologically speaking, a grain is a capsule protected by a shell, designed to pass through an animal's digestive tract without being digested. The grain is meant to fall to the ground with fertilizer and sprout. Nature designed it not to be eaten. It contains phytic acid, which blocks mineral absorption, and lectins, which damage the intestinal lining. But its main weapon is hidden in its very composition. Gluten is what turns grain into a tool for altering human biology. The name itself comes from the Latin word for glue. That soft, fluffy roll introduces a substance into your body that never fully dissolves. It settles on the intestinal walls, smoothing down the microvilli, those tiny structures through which nutrients are absorbed. Over the years, this layer thickens. The body stops absorbing vitamins. Food intake increases, but cells starve. The body becomes a biomachine running itself ragged, trying to digest the indigestible, and it doesn't stop there. Gluten has a structure suspiciously similar to the tissues of the thyroid gland and nervous system. The immune system, attacking this foreign protein, starts mistakenly targeting its own organs. Autoimmune disorders, diabetes, nervous system diseases. These aren't just age-related changes or genetic accidents. They're the predictable outcome of a diet built on something humans aren't biologically equipped to handle. But the most disturbing mechanism reveals itself when you look at gluten's breakdown products. Digesting wheat creates compounds that affect the brain much like morphine. Gluteomorphins, that's an actual scientific term. They bind to opioid receptors, producing a mild sense of pleasure and addiction. People reach for bread not because they're hungry. They reach for it because their brain is craving a fix. This isn't a metaphor or an exaggeration. Bread addiction has a clear biochemical basis. Gluten works like glue, literally and figuratively. It glues together the intestinal villi, depriving the body of nourishment. It clumps red blood cells, making blood thick and sticky. This sluggish blood struggles through capillaries, starving every organ, including the brain, of oxygen. An oxygen-deprived brain operates in energy-saving mode. Mental sharpness fades, critical thinking dulls. People stop asking questions. They just consume and exist. Grain became the perfect control mechanism. It can be stored, counted, rationed. You can't take away a forest that feeds people year-round, but you can easily take away a granary. The attachment to the field, the harvest, the bread, it's the chain that bound humanity. And that chain is made of gluten. The main secret isn't hidden in the grain itself, but in the technology that turns it into bread. In old recipes, sourdough was always something sacred, passed down from generation to generation. It was protected, nurtured, regarded almost as a living being. Modern bread, which can stay fresh for weeks and resist mold for months, causes bloating, heaviness, and overwhelming fatigue after eating. The difference between these two products is enormous, and it lies in what gets added to the dough today. Thermophilic yeast, or Saccharomycetes, began mass introduction into baking in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The official story says industrial yeast was developed to speed up production, to feed rapidly growing urban populations. Traditional sourdough required time and attention, while new yeast could produce a loaf in just hours. The timing of this shift strangely coincides with periods of sharp increases in cancer and autoimmune disorders. In the grand scheme of global processes, such coincidences are rarely accidental. The major misconception is that yeast dies during baking. That's not true. The temperature inside the breadcrumb rarely reaches critical levels, and spores of thermophilic fungi can survive extreme conditions. Entering the body with every bun eaten, they aren't digested or eliminated. They begin colonization. The warm, moist environment of the intestine becomes an ideal incubator for their reproduction. Once in a favorable environment, yeast, together with sugars, starts the process of alcoholic fermentation. Inside every person who regularly consumes modern bread, a tiny distillery operates. Medicine even has an official term, autobrewery syndrome, where the human body produces alcohol on its own without drinking it. In severe form, it's a rare condition, but in a mild background version, it affects millions of people daily. Endogenous ethanol and fusel oils, byproducts of yeast colony activity, enter the bloodstream and reach the brain. A state of mild, almost imperceptible intoxication sets in. Consciousness clouds, reactions slow, critical thinking dulls. A person lives in a state of low-grade toxic poisoning constantly, from childhood to old age, and considers it normal. They don't know what it's like to have a completely clear mind. The yeast colony demands constant feeding. It needs sugar, simple carbohydrates. That's why after a plate of pasta or a white bread sandwich, hunger returns with surprising speed. It's not the body demanding energy. It's the colony of parasitic fungi signaling. More. A person turns into an incubator and feeding station for foreign biomass that controls their behavior, mood, and eating habits. The colony reshapes the intestinal flora to suit its needs. Beneficial bacteria, essential for immunity and vitamin synthesis, are suppressed. Fungal flora proliferates, penetrating deeper into the intestinal wall tissue. Intestinal permeability increases, a condition medicine calls leaky gut. Undigested food particles, toxins, and the yeast themselves gain direct access to the bloodstream. The immune system drowns under constant attack, shifting into a state of chronic inflammation. Free energy, clear consciousness, longevity, all of this got blocked by a simple, cheap product. A person whose brain is slightly fogged by toxins and whose intestines are locked in constant battle with a fungal colony becomes the perfect worker. They're compliant, lazy, lacking initiative. Their will to resist is suppressed on a biochemical level. They don't rebel, don't ask extra questions, don't try to change the system. They just consume the provided feed and reproduce. The technology for producing thermophilic yeast has nothing to do with natural processes. It's a chemical industry product created in laboratories. Unlike wild yeast or sourdoughs that existed for thousands of years, thermophilic strains are aggressive, resilient, and foreign to the human body. They weren't part of humanity's evolutionary diet. Their introduction into the food chain became a point of no return, after which the planet's population health began steadily declining. There's a theory this was done intentionally. The goal, to create a population of humans with clouded consciousness and reduced energy potential. People who would live just long enough to work and reproduce, without accumulating critical knowledge or realizing their true situation. The settler's diet achieved its purpose. Humanity is hooked on a bread needle, unaware it's a needle at all. This also explains that strange fact archaeologists keep finding: evidence of civilizations whose technology and construction scale remain unattainable for modern humans. The great ancient structures, Egyptian pyramids, Baalbek temples, polygonal masonry in Peru, star forts across Europe, require for their creation a different level of organization, different energy, different lifespans for their builders. You can't train an engineer capable of designing such things in 20 years. They'd need to study for 100 years and work for another 200. If you look closely at old buildings in historic city centers, a strange pattern emerges. Ceilings soar 4, 5, even 6 meters high. Door handles sit at chest level or even eye level for modern people. Stair steps feel awkward, too high or too low for an average stride. Official history explains this as a pursuit of grandeur, aristocrats showing off status, air circulation features. But engineering logic suggests something else. Heating a space with 5-meter ceilings using primitive wood stoves is absurd from physics and economics standpoints. Warm air gathers at the top, people freeze below. That's not status, it's a budgetary disaster. Only a civilization with different energy sources, ones not requiring wood burning, could build such structures. And those structures were designed for beings of different stature, beings 3 to 4 meters tall. It creates the impression that current humanity lives in the leftovers of someone else's civilization, like ants inhabiting an abandoned computer tower. We walk through halls built for giants and don't notice the mismatch. We've adapted these buildings for ourselves, partitioned the high halls into floors, cut new doorways. But the architectural code screams that we aren't the owners here. We're settlers. We were brought into a ready-made world, full of ruins and incomprehensible technologies. To keep us from growing to the previous owner's size, to prevent our brains from operating at their frequencies, they changed our diet. The grain and yeast-based diet does its job, slows development, shortens lifespan, dulls consciousness. We'll never become those who built these palaces because every day we eat what keeps us from growing, literally and metaphorically. Deep within the human brain sits a tiny organ about which modern science knows surprisingly little. The pineal gland, or epiphysis, the size of a pea, was called the third eye in ancient traditions. It was believed to perceive subtle fields, provide intuition, connect to the information space, and grant access to knowledge not received through the senses. In the 20th century, science dismissed it as a vestige, a useless appendix responsible only for producing melatonin and regulating sleep cycles. But research in recent decades reveals something else. The pineal gland contains structures resembling the retina of the eye, cells sensitive to light, and crystalline formations whose nature isn't fully understood. It's a receiver, an antenna so sensitive it can pick up signals beyond the ordinary spectrum of perception. Ancient peoples had practices for activating this organ, allowing priests and initiates to receive knowledge directly. Modern humans face the opposite process. By age 30, most people's pineal glands turn into tiny stones. They become coated with calcium salts, lose sensitivity, and stop functioning. The receiver fails. Medicine considers this normal, an age-related change not worth attention. But the cause lies not in age, but in what lands on the plate every day. White flour, refined carbohydrates, synthetic additives, and fluoridated water create ideal conditions for tissue calcification. Fluoride, massively added to water in many countries, has a unique ability to accumulate in the pineal gland. Compounds in modern bread react, turning soft tissue into hard, calcareous sediment. A person loses connection with reality. Literally. A pineal gland turned to stone can no longer pick up subtle vibrations. Intuition dulls, the ability to sense falsehood vanishes, access to creative insights is cut off. A person is left alone with crude material reality, perceived only through 5 senses. They see only what can be shown, hear only what can be said. They become easy to control. They don't feel manipulation, don't see hidden meanings, don't ask uncomfortable questions. This state is perfect for a system built on control. A person with a blocked third eye cannot make breakthrough discoveries. They can only combine what's already known, rearrange old pieces. True creativity, true intuition, true genius require a functioning receiver. That's why geniuses are so rare in the modern world. That's why the technologies of ancients who built cyclopean structures seem incomprehensible. There's a theory that the previous civilization, the one before the catastrophe, had every person with a functioning pineal gland. People received knowledge directly from the field, needing no lengthy book learning. Lifespans of hundreds of years allowed experience accumulation, and a clear receiver granted access to information unavailable today, even to the most powerful computers. Building pyramids and megaliths was a natural process for them, like typing on a computer is for modern humans. After the catastrophe, the new masters of the world faced the need to block this channel in the new population. A person capable of receiving knowledge directly is too dangerous, too unpredictable. The ideal servant must be deaf to subtle signals. They must believe only what's written in official sources. They must not sense falsehood. The grain and fluoride-based diet solved this problem perfectly. Now just look at 19th century history to see how this system was implemented on a global scale. The 19th century is full of mysteries official history prefers to bypass. The first floors of old buildings in any European or Russian historical center sink 2 to 3 meters into the ground. We're told about the cultural layer. Supposedly, over centuries, people didn't clean streets, dirt accumulated, and buildings gradually sank underground. Engineering logic refuses this explanation. In city centers where life thrived, where thousands passed, accumulating 3 meters of dirt without street cleaning for centuries is impossible. Besides, the basement floors of these buildings are often fully functional living spaces with windows, doors, stairs. They weren't gradually filled. They were flooded in a single event. This is catastrophe evidence. A mud flow, a debris avalanche, a clay rain that covered the planet in relatively recent historical past. After this catastrophe, new populations are brought into cleared or partially cleared territories. People arrive in empty or half-empty cities, find ready houses, factories, machinery whose workings they barely understand. They find gigantic ovens they convert for bread baking. They find structures called temples and begin using them for religious rituals, though originally they might have been power installations. In the 19th century, a demographic explosion occurs with no logical explanation from official history's perspective. The planet's population doubles, triples in record time. Women give birth yearly. This doesn't resemble natural reproduction under unsanitary conditions with no medicine. It resembles a program of forced biomass cultivation. The yeast and gluten-based diet works as a hormonal catalyst. It causes endocrine system changes leading to increased fertility. Offspring quality is sacrificed for quantity. Children are born more often, but live shorter and get sicker. This is an ideal model for rapidly filling empty territories with cheap labor. Star forts scattered across Europe and beyond are called fortifications by official history. But any military engineer will confirm a multi-rayed star shape is ineffective for defense against 18th–19th century artillery. However, it's perfect for wave physics. These are resonator contours, atmospheric electricity collection installations, nodes of a global energy network. After the catastrophe, these installations stopped working. Maybe the atmosphere's properties changed. Maybe they were deliberately shut down. The New World masters preferred to hook humanity on hydrocarbons and carbohydrates, making them dependent on oil extraction and grain cultivation. The network that could provide free energy to everyone was replaced by a system where energy must be paid for with labor and money. Black gold and white gold became the two main commodities on the exchange, two chains holding the modern world together. From early childhood, a person undergoes processing on two fronts, informational and biological. The school cafeteria and the classroom work as a team. In the cafeteria, they serve sweet tea with a bun. In history class, they teach that ancestors were cavemen savages. To believe the lie about the primitiveness of the past, you need a fogged brain. To fog it, you need to feed it paste made from flour and sugar. School meals become the foundation of all subsequent beliefs. The smell of the cafeteria lingers for life. That's where the conditioning sets in. Food should be heavy. After lunch, you should feel drowsy. They call this being full, but it's actually a toxic hit that shuts down critical thinking. A child's body, busy fighting gluten and yeast fermentation, can't ask questions. It obediently records, "Pyramids were built by slaves with copper chisels." There's no energy left to doubt. Childhood passes in a state of dietary intoxication. The brain gets used to operating at half power. A person doesn't know mental clarity, accepting heaviness and sleepiness after meals as normal. Growing up, they inevitably get sick. The body's resources, designed for a century, are burned in a decade fighting toxins. They go to a doctor, and the second act begins. Medicine isn't built on healing, but on managing illness. Doctors are trained in protocols created by the same structures that control the food industry. The link between diet and chronic disease is ignored. The patient is told, "It's age-related, it's genetic." They get a prescription, but they're never told the main thing. Stop eating what's harming you. A healthy person isn't profitable for the system. They don't buy medications, don't spend on tests. The ideal consumer is a person with a chronic condition, regularly paying pharmaceutical companies. Yeast bread with gluten guarantees the subscriber won't cancel their subscription. The food pyramid with grains at its base wasn't created by nutritionists, but by grain and sugar producers. It's a marketing plan to sell cheap raw materials disguised as health advice. But the system is glitching. The number of people with gluten intolerance is rising. Medicine calls it celiac disease. But there's another view. It's the body trying to protect itself. DNA is attempting to reject the foreign code implanted through food. Bodies are starting to rebel. Intestines become inflamed. Immunity attacks its own tissues, forcing the product to be eliminated. Gluteomorphins create an addiction similar to a narcotic one. Giving up bread is difficult, not because of hunger. It's the parasitic system inside demanding its dose. The fungal network wrapped around nerve endings sends distress signals. A person is a hostage inside their own body. The yeast colony demands carbohydrates, dictating eating behavior. Freedom of choice is an illusion. Decisions are made by biochemistry, shaped by diet. The rise in gluten intolerance might mean humanity is trying to shake off its chains. The immune system is increasingly recognizing the enemy. This is a rebellion of cells against years of poisoning. The elites know this. Their diet is different. At closed receptions, they don't serve sliced white bread. There are exclusive food sources that allow them to maintain mental clarity. The old control tool is failing. That's why new technologies are being aggressively promoted. Bread made from insects. Humanity is being prepared for the next generation settler diet. Even more artificial, even more disconnected from natural sources. The urgency is understandable. If too many people start healing, the system loses control. The trap must snap shut before those waking up can grasp what's happening. Beyond the described system lies another level of reality. Those who truly control global processes exist in a different food space. Their diet has nothing in common with what sits on ordinary store shelves. Private farms and research centers supply products most people never suspect exist. The elites wouldn't poison themselves with what they use to poison the population. Alongside this, there's a growing interest in ancient practices, raw food diets, fasting. It's an instinctive attempt by the body to remember lost settings. People are searching for ways to reject industrial food. Their bodies are wiser than their conscious minds. They remember. The pineal gland, turned to stone in most people, can regain sensitivity in some when diet changes. Intuition returns, perception sharpens. The body begins picking up signals previously inaccessible. The current moment is a tipping point. The old mechanism is wearing out. The new one isn't fully implemented yet. A window of opportunity has opened. Those who manage to grasp what's happening can exit the system before the new trap snaps shut. Giving up industrial bread, giving up addictive foods. It's not just a diet change. It's reclaiming control over your own perception. A step toward restoring connection with reality, unfiltered through a toxic haze. The bread story is just the tip of the iceberg. The 70-year span isn't a biological norm, but an artificial limit. The body is capable of more. The brain is capable of more. Access to information exists, but it's blocked daily by what lands on the plate. Every piece of bread is a signature on a contract. Agreement to stay within boundaries. Agreement to a 70-year cycle instead of a 1,000-year one. The contract is signed automatically, without the signer's knowledge. Knowledge offers a choice. You can keep feeding the colony inside you. You can break free from addiction, going through a period of cleansing. You can seek ways to restore lost functions, to regain the ability to absorb energy directly. The ancients knew food comes in different forms. One gives strength and clarity, another gives the illusion of fullness and gradual decline. In the modern world, choice is cluttered with marketing and addiction. The system never counted on questions. It was built on automatic habit following. The question is, who feeds whom? Does a person feed the colony or find a way to nourish themselves differently? Everyone answers 3 times a day. Awareness of choice is the first step out of the trap called the settler's diet.